during the combine this week, expect the Myles Garrett sweepstakes to heat up. The Buffalo Bills are one of the rumored teams who are allegedly the front runners to acquire him in a potential trade. And I want to discuss if Buffalo should even trade for Myles Garrett. And before you say, oh, it's a no-brainer, Buffalo should trade for Myles Garrett, whatever it takes to get him, let me ask you this. Do you think trading for Myles Garrett would be the Bills repeating the same mistake that they just made with Von Miller when he was coming off that Super Bowl win with the LA Rams and they gave him that massive contract in free agency? It was thought that he could bounce back to the level that he was in his prime with the Broncos, although he was up there in age at 33 at the time he signed that deal. And he hasn't been able to live up to the expectations. He hasn't been bad, but he definitely hasn't been the player the Bills thought they were going to get when they gave him that massive contract. And it looks like he might end up being a potential cap casualty due to him not really performing up to those standards that was expected that came with that deal. Myles Garrett, if you trade for him, is it another situation where the Buffalo Bills are once again giving up a lot of assets or a lot of money to a guy that is going to quickly fall off due to old age? Myles Garrett currently is 29. He turns 30 at the near end of this year. How many prime years of high-level football does Myles Garrett still have left in the tank? Would it be enough to justify the Buffalo Bills giving up 2, 3 first-round picks potentially, along with a few other second-round picks to go along with it? I think so. The Buffalo Bills at this point, you have nothing to lose by trading for Myles Garrett. Don't give me that nonsense about we need to build through the draft. Building through the draft has gotten the Buffalo Bills nowhere defensively. They haven't drafted a Pro Bowl caliber player in the first round on defense in 7 years. Their last Pro Bowler on defense that they drafted was Tremaine Edmonds. Myles Garrett would be a better player than anybody the Buffalo Bills could use any first round capital on in the next 3 draft classes. Right now, Myles Garrett is the best player in the NFL. He has had double-digit sacks every single season since his second year in the league. The brother continues to get better the older he gets. And with Myles Garrett being a Hall of Fame caliber player, he regresses at a slower rate than your average player at the position. He still has about 4 or 5 years of elite football left in him. Khalil Mack put up a 17-sack season last year at the age of 31, 32 years old. And the difference between Myles Garrett trading for him versus when Buffalo signed Von Miller in free agency is that Myles Garrett, if you trade for him right now, you're getting him at 29 years old. You signed Von Miller at 33. A lot of us had a feeling that Von Miller contract was not going to age well. There was a lot of criticism around it. If you're a Bills fan, you remember there were a lot of people at your neck saying that you overpaid for Von because he definitely didn't look like the same player during that Super Bowl run with the Rams that he looked like during his glory days with the Broncos. And coming off an ankle injury as well that sidelined him for all of the previous season, didn't help his cause neither. There were a lot of red flags that the Bills ignored about Von Miller out of desperation because they truly felt they had to get a difference maker at that point, and they felt Von Miller was that guy who could be that key piece to get them past Kansas City. But just because that didn't work out how you planned doesn't mean that you don't roll the dice again. Nobody wins in the NFL by trying to be conservative. You are not that good drafting defense in the first round. You draft offense incredibly well in the early rounds of the draft, but you always whiff on first-round picks on defense. Ed Oliver is probably the best first-rounder that you drafted. Ka'ir Elam is a bust. The guy can't even be a backup on the majority of teams. He's probably going to be playing in the UFL next year. you have no choice if you are the Buffalo Bills to give up anything that's required to get Myles Garrett on your doggone team. You are right there at this point. You need to get all the superstars you can get to get you over that hump. This is your window. You're not going to have all eternity to win the Super Bowl. You got to strike when Josh Allen is still in his prime. You don't want to wait for Josh Allen to fall off, his body falls apart, and then all of a sudden you want to try to go all in on winning now. If you have an opportunity to get a player like a Myles Garrett, you go get him. There isn't no such thing as finding good value when you're trading for one of the greatest players in the history of the NFL. Literally. I don't give a hoot about who you could get in the draft. Nobody that you're going to spend any of those first round picks that you will use to trade for Myles Garrett is going to be a better player than him. They're not. What's the odds that you draft 3 Hall of Fame level players with your next 3 first round picks? Pretty slim to none, especially with your history on defense. F those picks, man. The Buffalo Bills, they're lacking elite players on defense. Myles Garrett would fix 2 of their biggest issues that they had last season. First of all, he's going to beef up the interior of that defensive line, because when you stunt him, when you have him moving from the outside, coming in, rushing the middle of the offensive line, that's going to help Buffalo's interior D-line improve. You also, with Myles Garrett, are going to be better at having a more consistent pass rush in the fourth quarter of games. You got Gregory Rousseau, you got AJ Epinesa. Those guys are solid pass rushers, but they're not elite pass rushers. They are not guys that are always going to win one-on-one all the time against opposing offensive linemen. With Myles Garrett, though, you add him to this defense, that's going to really help AJ Epinesa and Gregory Rousseau elevate their game to the next level. Right now, AJ Epinesa is stuck around being a 6.5 sack guy. Gregory Rousseau, he looks like he could reach that ceiling where he could become a double-digit sack contributor. But getting Myles Garrett, though, would definitely speed up that process. Yeah, you have some cap issues right now, but you can figure that out. You got a really good general manager. You got a great front office. You got a great organization. At this point, the Bills need to get all of the superstar players that they have money to get if they're available. You are right there. The Ravens didn't have to get Derrick Henry. They were already dominating running the football without him. But they went and got him anyway, because you can never have too many great football players. Stop trying to be cheap all the time. No matter how conservative you try to be building a team the most feasible way financially, you're still going to have a few gambles you're going to have to make with certain contracts. Rather, if it's, banking on a guy like a Zach Bond with the Philadelphia Eagles to be a good contributor for you, who hasn't really had that much experience being a starter in the past, or if it's, being able to get the most out of guys that you draft. It's just the Buffalo Bills. The difference between them, the Kansas City Chiefs, and the Philadelphia Eagles is that they do a poor job of drafting on the defensive side of the football. That's why they have to trade for Myles Garrett. If you're not going to get it right in the draft, you might as well go ahead and get an already proven commodity. Even if Myles Garrett somewhat regresses, what does a regressed Myles Garrett look like? Is that still giving you 10, 12 sacks a season? Is that still somebody who's a contender every year for Defensive Player of the Year? At this point, I would be stacking all the chips possible to get Kansas City. It's not enough. No matter if you think it's enough, you need more, and you're not going to get that in the draft. You need guys who could help you reach the Super Bowl right now. There aren't too many rookies that can do that for you. And I don't know if your general manager is going to be able to sniff him out based off his history. Myles Garrett makes sense for Buffalo. It's not about trying to find the right value. It's not about not overpaying, not wanting to pay him. You're going to have to pay great players. Great players deserve to get paid for a reason. If you don't have great players, you're not going to be able to compete for a Super Bowl. There has never been a Super Bowl winning team that didn't have players that were top earners at their position. You're not going to have a Super Bowl contender where you have a whole roster comprised of guys on team-friendly contracts and rookie deals. This isn't Madden, guys. This is real life. The Bills need a superstar on defense. Myles Garrett is that piece that they possibly could get that could finally get them into the Super Bowl and finally holding up that Lombardi trophy.